Good morning everyone and welcome to the Yorkshire Dales on a horrible drizzly day in late or mid-May. Today I'm going to be hiking on the Ingleton Waterfalls Trail, which is quite possibly the most famous waterfall walk in England from what I've heard. It's basically a loop walk that takes you past about half a dozen waterfalls. Most of them are small, but a couple are sizable enough. And this is a really nice popular walk up here in the Yorkshire Dales. So I've kind of taken trains, planes and automobiles to get here, mostly trains and buses, but it's been a few hours of travel from Manchester to do what I'm told is meant to be a really nice walk. Now, while it is a nice walk, it's also a very expensive walk. It costs £10 to do the track, which I think is absurdly expensive, to be honest, for a 4-hour trail. But I'm going to be getting around that by going up a sort of side road that runs parallel to the track and then making a funny little route that will get me out of paying the £10, because I think that on principle that is far too much to be charged to walk a track, really. So I'll show you where I go to help you, if you want to come, also not have to pay, and we'll see all the waterfalls and all the scenery and take some photos. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Really just classic English countryside vibes with all these sort of stone walls, sheep pastures and rolling green hills. It's a beautiful time of year to go for a walk. Everything is just coming so green. When I've done some walks in the last 6 weeks since I've been in the country, it's mostly been kind of before the real springtime breakout has happened, so it's been quite brown. But just over the last week or two, it's really come through on all these deciduous trees. So I've walked from Ingleton towards this little Thornton in Lonsdale town. I'll be taking this right here, and then in a minute I'll be taking another right onto Thornton Lane. And basically that is going to run parallel to the River Twiss, I believe, which is the first river the track follows up. Then I can cut across on a separate trail, get me to sort of the top section of the waterfalls. Basically, the trail runs up the River Twiss, cuts across, then down the River Doe. There's sort of a couple of waterfalls on each of the rivers. So following up parallel to the River Twiss, I can then cut down to those waterfalls, back up, and then out the other side of the circuit on the River Doe. Just passing this inn and old church, which is the cue to turn right onto the Thornton Lane. Well, it's not a bad little climb up, but as you can see from the view behind me, it does have some advantages. I have to say I'd probably prefer to drive this bit about a car, because it's a bit of a trek to be doing before the hike proper actually starts. But can't complain about that too much, can you? So approaching the turnoff now, you can kind of see that little laneway that goes across there, then over the bridge towards the trail, which is over there. Slightly concerned that there's a person down there with sheep, so I'm hoping it's actually okay to go through that way, but we'll soon find out, I guess. So heading across this bridge over the River Twiss, I spoke to the farmer and it's all good. You're allowed to come through this way, because I was getting a bit concerned there approaching and seeing a guy down here with sheep, but yeah, not to be. You're allowed to come through this way. Obviously don't bother the sheep, because I think it is actually a private property, but the landowners obviously allow access through this way. Okay, so made it onto the trail now. There was a sign saying no access, because apparently you meant to walk the other way, but I can plead innocence because I did not know that. Anyways, Thornton Falls, you can just sort of see it where it'll be falling in there, so it's not very far. Down we go to the first waterfall of the day. Well, we've made it to the top of Thornton Falls. 14-metre drop apparently, and it's impressively powerful looking down there. Well, Made it down to the base of the impressive Thornton Falls. It's clearly the main waterfall attraction along this walk. It's a 14-metre single drop into a really nice pool, which in drier and warmer times would be pretty good for a swim. What's really interesting as well, you can kind of see this little waterfall off to the side where it looks like the river actually flows underground and then emerges through a bit of a spout in the cliff there, which is kind of cool. But really it's just an idyllic scene and an impressively powerful fall. Water. So, left Thornton Falls, still out in the open here, but I believe it's going to close in fairly soon as we approach Pecker Falls. I'm not actually sure exactly how far away it is, but I don't think it's a long walk. But we'll soon find out anyways. Well, as I suspected, barely 5 minutes after leaving Thornton Falls, we've come towards Pecker Falls as we enter the overgrowth again. Certainly sounds good. This is the Hollybush Spout, which is kind of the upper section of Pecker Falls. Only small, but got a nice kind of punch bowl shape going on. So, made it to the end of Pecker Falls, the very base of it. Apparently it's about a 30-metre drop all up, which I wouldn't doubt because it's got probably 7 or 8 tiers to it, as you could see from my videos on the way down. Actually really nice. I almost prefer it to Thornton Falls just for the cumulative effect of all these little waterfalls and cascades. But this is the view from the bridge at the very base of Pecker Falls. I'm going to head a little further downstream. There's a bit of a viewpoint down there, I think. Get a quick look from there, maybe have a bite to eat, and then head on back. Well, as waterfall lookouts go, it's not exactly all-encompassing, the Pecker Falls viewing area. However, it is still a nice view up the river. A bit of waterfall in the background. So I'm back up at Hollybush Spout. It ended up being quite brief photo stop further down because there's just so much rain coming down. It was sort of just taking quick snaps from the lookout. I think it actually turned out okay, the shots I got from down there. I mean, I'm sure you'll see them in the video if I like them enough. But here it's cleared up a little bit, a bit of mist going around, but I'm doing something a little more creative, which hopefully will turn out. See on the viewfinder here. What I like is you kind of got the falls there, and that's the way the creek sort of twists in that lower cascade. Ideally, I'd want a wider angle lens so I could sort of get both sections in at once. As it is, I'm stuck just with the 18mm doing a three exposure blend. So that one's quite overexposed, and then I've got a slightly more underexposed one as well, just because of the contrast. A bit more sun out now, and the waterfall there is quite bright compared to the dark cliff. Anyways, onwards and upwards, back towards Thornton Force to hopefully take some photos. There's a huge school group that came through, so hopefully they're gone. So there we go. Making my way back upstream now, past this kind of interesting, like, tiered cascade there just above Thornton Force. Now, if you notice the name of the waterfall being Thornton Force, it's quite a common thing amongst a lot of waterfalls in England. And the reason for it is it's a bastardized version of the Icelandic or Norwegian foss, meaning falls. So a lot of the English waterfalls around Yorkshire and the Lake District will be something force, which kind of looks strange, although it's quite appropriate at Thornton Force given the power of that waterfall. But that's the reasoning behind the strange naming convention. Well, it's just come out of there, which is the first sort of half of the trail, and now on this lane that I was walking on a few hours earlier. Basically follow this lane around for a while. We hit the Falls Park, which is, I think, like a cafe, and I'm not really sure. There's a few things going on there, and that's kind of like the start of the second half of the walk. So just passed through the Falls Park, which has toilets and a kind of cafe and stuff. Now here's the continuation of the Waterfalls Trail, and it's only a very short walk down here to Beasley Falls, which is, I believe, a small falls, but hopefully nice. And this is Beasley Falls, quite a small fall, but pretty, and it's got kind of two sections to it here. I've seen people do some cliff jumping off the falls and sliding down it and stuff in summer, and I can definitely imagine doing that. It's a nice deep pool bar looks there. Really pretty little spot. Really gorgeous little section of the trail coming down from Beasley Falls. Cascades and twisting river and moss, and what looks like a slack line there, which would be interesting. Not sure I want to fall off it too much. So basically now we're following down the River Doe, which is, I believe, a slightly bigger river than the Twist, but it doesn't have as many large waterfalls. The falls along here are more kind of like the cascade types. Nice little two-tiered cascade, just a little bit further downstream. Now, according to a sign, this is Rival Falls, although it's kind of two tiers, which are about both a metre each high. So I'm not really sure I classify it as a legitimate waterfall, but nonetheless it's still quite nice. Okay, a short spur trail here down to the Baxengill Gorge, which is a rather precarious bridge overlook type thing. Pretty cool actually. In fact, really cool. This tiny little slot canyon. Okay, so 5 minutes further on, have arrived at the last of the waterfalls for the track. This is Snow Falls, as pointed out by the sign. As you can see, the view is pretty shite, to be honest. Very obstructed. I've just come from that way, but I'm going to go back because I have a feeling that there'll be a way to scramble down to river level and hopefully get some nicer photos. We'll see how we go. Well, as suspected, I was able to make it down to the base of Snow Falls. It was just sort of a little steep scramble on the side there, not really too bad. A bit slippery and steep, but I've done far worse. And it's a really nice view here. Not a big waterfall, but there's some nice sort of patterns in the river in front of it. So I'm hoping I can come up with something nice photo-wise. Also quite happy to get down here, as I've actually never seen a photo from the base of this fall, so hopefully come up with something a bit different to the classic waterfall shots you've seen 100 times along this trail. So what I've been playing around with the camera here is, if you look in front, there are lots of sort of little bits of foam, and in long exposure those all turn into little whirlpools. So you get some amazing flow line. If I do show you the creek, this whole section in the front here gets brilliant patterns in long exposure. So I'm going to see what I can come up with there, and hopefully it turns out nicely. If it does, you'll see it now. About to cross over the Doe. I really like their narrow sort of suspension bridge along this track. Beautiful view upstream. And equally downstream. Also worth noting, they put a one-way gate system in place there, so you definitely couldn't come in this way without crossing the river, basically, because you're not getting past that gate. Approaching the end of the trail now, just sort of plodding along this fairly wide track well above the river, so it's the scenic part of the track really ended just after that bridge. Definitely a really nice, worthwhile walk. I mean, it's the most famous waterfall walk in England. There's 4 proper waterfalls plus a couple more sort of small ones, and absolutely worth the visit. Now, the only bone I have to pick with it is the whole system with the payment. £10 for one trail is a lot. I mean, I'm going to Plitvice next week in Croatia. The whole national park and 2 ferry rides cost £12. There's one 7-mile track, and looking at it, I don't think much track work's gone in the last 20 years realistically, so it's kind of a rort for mine. Especially, what really was annoying me is there is so much rubbish everywhere. If you're going to charge £10, pay someone to come pick up all the rubbish, because it's quite disgusting in places, the amount of rubbish and cigarette butts and coffee cups which would sort of tossed all over the place and not cleaned up. So on that note, I think my route of just cutting in via Thornton Lane, avoiding paying, and then going down to the waterfalls that way is the way to go, unless you really want to do the whole loop properly. But whatever you do, a beautiful walk. Like the River Twiss and Doe are spectacular. The Twiss has better waterfalls, the Doe has really awesome gorge scenery. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Well, I just recorded the end of the video, which you'll see, but 2 minutes later I crossed over a little creek, sounded promising downstream, so I found a little trail, led me down to the river level, and I found this great little waterfall. Pretty sure it's unnamed, never seen any photos of it. I'm going to call it Little Ingleton Falls, so that seems appropriate. Probably seasonal, it's not a very big creek, but it's quite nice actually, and it flows basically straight into the river. So just after you go through the exit gate, you'll cross over a little creek there, and it's just downstream from there basically. So if I follow a little further along, you'll meet up with kind of a side trail that leads to what I think is an old bridge just behind me there. Scramble down to river level, upstream, you couldn't do any flood, and you'll be here. Great little way to finish the walk on an unexpected waterfall note. But this will be the actual end of the video. Thanks for watching again, and I will see you wherever I can find next.